Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Natalie Franzi from the New Jersey Standard Advocates. Thank you for being patient with us as we work through some technical difficulties. We're excited to bring the second of our interstate webinar series about tech sets tonight. We have we have three core advocates from Kentucky with us. The third should be joining us soon. We have Dr. Angie Gunter, who's a literacy specialist at Green River Regional Educational Cooperative. And this school includes 43 schools, and it's a district in Western Kentucky. Another presenter we have with us tonight is Katie Jacobs, and she provides math intervention services for students in grades K through 3 at Paris Elementary School in Paris, Kentucky. And Angela Lindsey will be joining us a little later, and she can introduce herself when she gets on. So I'm going to turn it over now to Katie and Angie. In Paris, Kentucky. And Angela Lindsey will be joining us a little later, and she can introduce herself when she gets on. So I'm going to turn it over now to Katie and Angie. Just another tip to help with the feedback, Angie and Katie, you only want the window open with the Google Hangout. You don't want any of the YouTube windows open. Turn it over now.
That might be our problem. Let me close. Okay. Thank you, Natalie. That's very helpful. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for dealing with our technical difficulties. So we're gonna plow right through and hope you can see our tech sets screen. My name is Angie Gunter. I'm going to start with a study. And so we're looking at a longitudinal study it was released in 2006, and they did a 10-year study. It was called Reading Between the Lines, and it was for the ACT. And so what they did was looked at student success in college. And so if in college, the students had a 75% chance of getting a C and a 50% chance of getting a B or higher in their college humanities courses, they looked back and saw that on the ACT, they got a 20 in reading. So they're looking at, that's how they actually set the reading benchmark at 20 on the ACT, was through that longitudinal study. And they thought that students could be successful in college if they could read and score a 20 on the ACT. So they teased out the specific aspects of what they thought would make a reader a good reader versus a reader who struggled reading, and like what are the skills that students who scored a 20 on the reading portion of the ACT had that students who didn't score a 20 did not have. And one of the logical ones that you might go to would be students who could read literally versus students who could infer. And so they thought, okay, these students who can't infer, I bet they scored lower on the ACT than students who couldn't. But as you see, the lines are almost identical. And so they tried to then go through and think, okay, what are some other aspects? What are some other things that students who don't read well struggle with versus the skills that students who can read well are able to master? So what we'd like for you to do is, if you will tweet with us and get on the hashtag Core Advocates, we'd like to hear from you. If you can just tweet out to us right now with the hashtag Core Advocates, what do you think are some things that students who are successful readers have or are able to do that kids who struggle with reading are not able to do? So we're just going to take a second, and if you'll just open your Twitter, go to the hashtag Core Advocates, and take just a minute and respond with, what do kids who struggle with reading, what kind of skills do they lack versus the kids who are successful with reading? Okay, so we're going to be watching the chat box. Katie's going to be watching the chat box and the Core Advocates hashtag on Twitter, and we're going to move along. The researchers looked at 6 different aspects of reading skill that they thought would differentiate the strong readers, the successful readers, versus the ones who struggled. And as you might have guessed, some of these, it could be kids that read for main idea and author's approach. It could be that students who could read for supporting details, they thought maybe that is the differentiating factor. Or maybe it's the students who could discern relationships within the reading, like make connections. Maybe it's meanings of words, students who could figure out meanings of words or could draw generalizations or make some kind of conclusions. But as you can see, this line is almost identical. That those 6 factors were not the differentiating factors for students who were successful in reading versus the students who were not successful in reading. So I'm looking on Twitter, and I see vocabulary for sure. A larger vocabulary, good. I'm seeing a trend for sure. So thanks for joining on the Twitter chat. We've got some more tweets to issue, so please keep your Twitter open. Okay, so I'm going to show you, this was the differentiating factor. When they did the study, what they found was that students who were placed in front of complex texts struggled with reading. That was the differentiating factor. And you can see it's a pretty large differentiating factor. The kids who could make the 20s and above were kids who could read a complex text when it was in front of them. So you might be saying, okay, if text complexity is a differentiating factor, then how do we determine what a complex text is? So we're going to do a really quick kind of mini assessment of text complexity. And on your screen, you see one passage that's written at a grade 3 level. And then right beside it is the same passage, but it's written at a grade 7 level. So we're going to take just a moment. And then, again, we're looking at the Core Advocates hashtag. But if you can take just a moment and finish this sentence, complex texts include blank, and add the hashtag Core Advocates. So comparing these 2 side-by-side pieces of text, what does the more complex one have? What does it do? What is different about the more complex one than the less complex one? So take just a minute, read through them, and if you will, compose a tweet about complex texts include blank with the Core Advocates hashtag. Okay, so if we're looking at these 2 texts side by side, and it's really the same text, some of the differentiating factors should be pretty obvious. Kind of looking, I've got, okay, good. Trisha wrote sophisticated sentence structures. Certainly. The second one has more complex sentence structures. What else do we notice? What about the vernal pools? Instead of these pools, it has vernal pools. So definitely some of some tier 3 and complex vocabulary, certainly. And then if you'll look at Yes, varied sentence structure, Angela. Yes, for sure. Down here at the bottom, it says in some ecosystems, they can support up to 35% of rare species. So there are statistics, there are details. It's much more visual. It's much more descriptive, most certainly. Okay, so we're going to move to the next one. So they did a study and they looked at the key features of complex text. And listen, the reason this is important for us is because if the differentiating factor among kids who struggle to read and the kids who can read well is complex text, then we need to know what those complex texts are, how to identify them, where to find them, and get them in front of kids and have them practice with them so they will be successful later in life. Okay, Char wrote academic vocab, complex sentence structures, information that's new. Very perfect, exactly. Okay, so in this list of 10 features, key features of complex text, we've got information that's dense, things that they will struggle through on their own, so we can like teach them and lead them through. Lack of words or sentences that pull things together for kids. The long paragraphs, we have to build some stamina. We talked about complex sentences, number 4, perfect. Text structures that are less narrative or mix some structures. They have these really subtle or very frequent transitions. And listen, there are multiple themes and purposes. Kids are used to us telling them or asking them, what is the theme? What is the purpose? When actually complex texts have many. Okay, number 8 is by far the most common, the uncommon vocabulary is the most common feature of complex text that you're going to see. And so we know that we've got to do lots with vocabulary acquisition with students. Number 9 is unfamiliar settings. And yes, that was on our Twitter chat, things that are new to them that they're not sure about. How many times if your students have been reading, they just simply skip over a foreign name or word they're not sure about? And the last one is lack of repetition or some overlap or similarity in words. So listen, this is really a guide. This is for us to use as things that we want to make sure that we put in front of students every day. So Angela, are you on? Can you hear and can you unmute and take over? Okay, I'm not sure if Angela can hear. Let me see. Okay, we're going to go on. Okay, so we know that text complexity is essential. We know that it's required. And if you see nothing else on this slide, if you get nothing else from this whole webinar tonight, that last bullet is the most important piece of information. There's no evidence that struggling readers catch up by reading simpler texts. It doesn't happen. And sadly, what happens is we give students often these leveled readers that really decreases the number of words and the levels of words, which actually deprives the students from getting to see those words. It is that Matthew effect, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And sadly, that's what happens often in our classes. And this is what we need to stop doing. We need to make sure that students get that complex text. I really found this screen compelling. It's the number of exposures that are required for students for word recognition, for them to be able to actually use these words. And if you see at the top of the screen, the higher the cognitive level, the fewer numbers of exposures students really need before they can use the words. So if you're at the highest level of cognitive ability, you only need to see a word 20 times before you can use it effectively. But look, if you go down to the bottom, those students need to see that word 55 times. And what happens when we level the text is we take out those words. So the ones who need it the most are getting to see it the least. And to me, that is a real problem. That's an issue. So ultimately, it is an equity issue. This is a problem for us because we can't take away those texts for students. We can't deprive them of that learning ability that's really going to set them up for success later in life. We really need to talk, though, about the difference between productive struggle and mere frustration. We want to make sure that we help kids access those texts. So we're going to put something in front of them that's really, really difficult. We'll use some of these strategies, such as chunking. Maybe we're going to give the kids who can read very, very well the full text to read. And then we're going to give the full text to another group of students, but maybe we're going to only have them responsible for reading one paragraph of it, really wading through and getting through just one paragraph. And very many of those students will likely go ahead and read more of that if it's in front of them, if we give them the whole text. But if we only gave them that one paragraph, they wouldn't have the chance to do it. And so it really is an equity issue. We need to make sure that we're allowing them to read it. Maybe we'll give the students who are struggling a lower level text first so they can develop that schema, and then provide them with the upper level complex text so that they have now, some background information, and it might be a little bit easier for them. There are some more strategies here. I think that these are ones that we use often. We're going to move on for the sake of time, and we're going to talk about assistive technology. Katie, can you get on?
Hi.
You unmute. Yay.
Yeah. Our next slide is discussing assistive technology. If you would take a moment to read through the list that is provided for the assistive technology, we're wondering, have you used any of these to access text? And are there any others that you know of as well? So please use our Twitter hashtag Core Advocates to respond. We've taken a look at a few of these. Some popular ones that we were talking about were the Wordify.com, the Read and Write for Google Chrome, because that's popular in schools these days, as along with the speak screen on iPads and our iPhones. We also want to mention the academic word finder from Achieve the Core, and definitely make sure to check out that resource.
So we'll wait just a second if there are any other good testimonials out there for people who use any of these. If you'll hashtag Core Advocates. I know I've used Rewordify with my students, is given them the option of looking at articles, and the Rewordify is really nice because it will give them definition or change it to some word levels that are a little bit easier for them. And then Screencastify I use all the time to just flip what I'm doing, kind of flip the classroom, and it just shows what's on my screen and hears me talk. And so the students can rewind it over and over again if they need to, and look at the directions and look at it step by step. And I think that's a really great way to kind of model think aloud for reading and questioning for students as they're going through. Okay, so if you will, just hashtag Core Advocates, any of these. We'll move along. Sorry, there's the hashtag.
We also have a key question that we want to talk about. How can we use complex text to build knowledge? And again, we want to make it interactive, so please use the hashtag Core Advocates to respond with how can we use complex text to build knowledge?
Katie, I'm noticing that Char is saying that she likes the Weava extension in Chrome. Allows kids to highlight and annotate in 4 different colors.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it collects their highlights, certainly. Angela wrote Audio Boom for reading modifications.
Very cool.
Okay, so as you're thinking and typing, I think Katie's going to go on to the next one here.
So we want to also discuss a research study, on the baseball study, where researchers compared the relative impact of reading ability to the impact of knowledge of a topic. So in this study, 7th grade and 8th grade students read a passage about baseball, and then they were tested on their comprehension of the passage. And the students were then categorized as shown on your screen, with the different color codes right there. They were categorized with the results and then compared. So if you take a moment to think about how these results would be ranked, so each of those 4 there, how these results would be ranked based on how each group performed on the comprehension passage. So they were ranked by the percentage of questions they got correct. So take a moment to make a prediction or a hypothesis or et cetera about how would we rank these most successful. And as you look at it, you can probably compare it to other students in your classes, making connections. And on this next slide, as we move on, you can see that with the results, a high percentage of students who did well, they all had a high reading ability that corresponded with their high knowledge of the topic. And then you can reflect on that with other students in your classroom as well as yourself. And then on the other spectrum, on the other end, a low percentage of students did well. They didn't, in comprehension, they had the low reading ability with the low knowledge.
Right, and I think this is surprising to some people, Katie. You would think that kids who can read, but this is definitely testimony that it's knowledge that's as important as the reading skill, right?
I agree. I've a teacher that mentored me one time said a student can read like a songbird, but they got to tell you what they read, and I completely agree.
I like that.
So we typically skip from topic to topic, like plants today, we're learning about mammals tomorrow, and then colonies the next week. Instead, what we're emphasizing here is you need to spend time reading several texts on the same topic in order to build the knowledge and build that rich vocabulary faster. And we cannot afford to not use the most effective and fastest way to gain that knowledge. So this research that's quoted here in these 2 bullets, it led to the creation of text sets. And it's a thoughtfully sequenced series of texts designed to build knowledge and vocabulary.
Wonderful, wonderful, Katie. So we're going to go through what a text set would look like. This is a text set that was for 5th grade students, and it was entitled Earth's Precious Resource. And all the text sets are grouped around an essential question. And this particular essential question is, what can we learn about the world's water supply? And so this slide is a little bit grainy, but it does demonstrate what is included in a text set. So you'll notice that there are 2 books in the text set. There are articles. They've got 3 articles. There's a video on the water cycle. And then there's a classification for other media. So they have an infographic and an interactive calculator. And all of these resources circle around the Earth's precious resources. So that's what a text set looks like. When you're going through the sequencing of the text set, that's the next thing. So after you've chosen your text that you're going to do, all different types of texts, the sequencing is really important. So this sequence is column. It goes down the column. And you'll notice that it starts with a 760 lexile article. And I want you to look at the word count. It's 573 words. Okay, so then we move from an article to an infographic. And the next thing we move to is a video. So, you know, think to yourself for just a second why we would start out with an article and then quickly introduce an infographic and a video. Why do you think that might be important? Well, obviously students are engaged with pictures, right? Students are engaged with the video. They don't even think that they're working. And often if they see the infographics, you can really help with that engagement and initial understanding. Okay, so if we go back then to the reading level, we started out at the beginning with a 760 lexile reading level. Well, look, after the video and the infographic, we're ramping them up to a 1010. That's a really big jump. But then you notice at the top of the next column, they're back down to a 760 lexile. So if you look at that, what might be the differentiating factor? Why would we have dropped from a 1010 to a 790? Well, you probably notice the length of the 1010 is only 583 words, but the length of the 790 is 48 pages. So what we're doing is dropping the lexile a little bit, the complexity a little, to build some stamina. So we've got that 790 lexile with 48 pages. We're going to ramp it up to an 820 lexile with 32 pages. And then we're going to going back up to a 1070 lexile. So the sequencing in this text set project is really important. That's probably one of the things that, the thing that made me buy into it the most is that very intentional sequencing, because I always grouped you know, similar things together for students, but I really like the intentionality of this. So the next thing that all the text sets include are these rolling knowledge journals, which I think is brilliant. I wish I had thought of this. But basically, as the students read, they're writing down what information, what specific information, what perspective, what new thing did I learn that added to my already built knowledge. So in that first one, you can see, you know, they didn't add anything because they're just reading about that new information. Then they read the second one, and then, or actually this is a video. So after watching the video, how does that video actually add to my knowledge? And you have to be really specific about it. And I think this metacognition is something that is so helpful for kids, and we really need to require it and model it for students. I think it's really important. So the rolling knowledge journal, super important feature of the text set. The next really important feature is vocabulary. So you could do, for every resource that the kids read, every article, every video, every infographic, have them choose the 6 most important words that they think are different or cool or hard. But it doesn't necessarily have to be the hardest words, but 6 that are most pertinent to that text. You could have sensational 6, you could have fabulous 4, you could have fantastic 5, however many you want to do, but really it's so that students start becoming aware of vocabulary and how they make that connection. Because as Katie shared earlier, that vocabulary is acquired so much faster when they're reading like texts. So here's an example. You'd have the kids choose 6 words and write them in sentences, or have the sentences that are, you know, that they found them in the text. But then at the very end, you have them choose 6 total from all the articles. So you have, say, 7 or 8 resources, and they have, say, 6 or so, you know, 50 words, 6 from each one. And they choose these 6 most important ones and then summarize their learning using all of the vocabulary that they've gained. I love this idea. Love, love, love it. I think it's a very important aspect of the text set. Katie?
I'm here to discuss choosing a topic by using an essential question. So if you look at what are the essential questions that you can ask is a good question to guide your planning. What would you consider in selecting a topic for your next text sets? So here are some examples on here, looking at endurance, your leverage, readiness for the next level of learning, and your external exams for the state and national college and career entrances. They're step 1.
Yeah, and I think this is really important. Thanks for sharing this, Katie.
Yes.
If you can find a topic or ask an essential question to a student, like instead of say, I'm going to do a unit about fall, you know, I was working with some preschool teachers and they said, we want to do a fall unit or a fall about, you know, because we get to do apples and pumpkins and that's wonderful. But we were trying to think of how we can make it really, even for preschool and, you know, kindergarten level, how can we make this something, turn it into a question that will help them, you know, later in life? And so we were thinking of these 4 categories, like what are some things that they'll need in life, some skills that they'll need in life, and for the next level and for cross-curricular content. And, you know, they're not doing exams yet, but, you know, for later exams. And so we really talked about an essential question that might be, instead of a fall unit, we might have a question about how does the weather affect changes in our environment? And, you know, that question, framing it in that way, even for very, very young students, I think is really important. And of course, you hit that sweet spot when you can, you know, find a question or a topic that incorporates all 4 of these. That's really what we're looking for. So thanks for sharing that one, Katie. Okay, so Angela, are you able to get on yet? I'm going to wait just a second and see if you can, if you're able to talk. Okay, I hate to speak for Angela, but I'm gonna share what she shared with us earlier about this particular slide. So after you've decided on a very important essential question and you've decided that these are some things that I want my students to know and care about and learn about, the step 2 is to gather these texts and resources that are gonna help the kids with learning about whatever it is we're trying to teach them. And I'll just share Angela Lindsey's example of the Island of Blue Dolphins. She was having the students read that. She was able to make cross-curricular connections. And so for going back to this slide, I love what she said. She was making some cross-curricular connections with the students. They were looking at some tsunamis. She was engaging with the math content and the science content, along with her reading content. And she was able to find some really good sources and some paired texts through ReadWorks. So this is a tiny partial listing of places where we find some great text resources. We've got that hashtag Core Advocates again on the screen. And if you'll take just a moment and think about what are the places, we've got ReadWorks, Newsela, Common Lit, Room for Debate, Tween Tribune, of course, the text sets that are already developed on Achieve the Course website. But where are places that you go? What are some resources that you use? If you'll hashtag Core Advocates and tell us, share with everyone some of the great resources that you use or places that you go to find text and engaging information for students. As you're doing that, we'll just talk quickly about ReadWorks and Newsela. Those will let you look for specific skills. You can filter through specific skills. You can filter through specific standards. You can filter it with grade levels specifics if you want to. They suggest there are already some text sets there. So if you're looking at a topic and you want to find a text set, those are great places to start. I really like Common Lit, especially as an English teacher, because it connects literature and poetry. along with the informational text that you'll find in Newsella. ReadWorks also has some literary connections as well. The room for debate that we have listed up there is really good, especially for the older crowd. What happens in New York Times Room for Debate is they'll have an author who will write from his or her perspective about a topic. And then on that same page, you have from anywhere from 3 to 6 different authors writing with a different perspective about that same topic. And what's so great about the Room for Debate website on the New York Times site is that it's also filterable through different topics, which is wonderful. Tween Tribune is another one by the Smithsonian, in which you can find some really great paired texts and lots of resources for the kids. I see Natalie tweeted that if you have the funds to spend, American Reading has great text sets. Oh yeah, thanks Natalie. Trisha, Common Lit for sure. Oh yeah, Engage New York. I think Louisiana Believes had some really good text sets too, that are very much like the Engage New York text sets. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so keep sharing those. If the next step after you've found some resources, you know, what you're going to run into is there are going to be so many, you're going to have so many things to choose from. You want to make sure that you have video, that you have some visuals. Oh, PBS Learning Media, they have some really great videos that you can use. I forgot about that one. I need to for sure make sure I mention that PBS Learning Media. So then what you need to do, your next step is really narrow it down. You don't want to overwhelm the kids, I mean, you know, and have a million resources for them to look at, but say 5 to 7 really quality resources that you've purposefully sequenced. And in addition to the Lexile level, which is the quantitative aspect of the reading abilities for students, you really need to look at the qualitative measures. And on Achieve the Core's website, there are tons of really great qualitative rubrics, including one that's on your screen now, that will allow you to look at all the different aspects that aren't strictly measured by numerical factors like in Lexile. So you can look at really the purpose for the reading, and then you can rate it. It gives you language that you can, these informational text rubrics and literary text rubrics, lots of other sources on the Achieve the Core website that help with how to figure out if your text that you've chosen is really at the right level for the kids, you know, that fine line between productive struggle and frustration, and with making sure that we get the complexity that the kids need. So we want to show you the Kentucky Text Set site. Last year, we had a cohort from a district, from Davis County District in Kentucky, and we got their work together. I've got a little link on here. We got their work together and published it on the Kentucky Text Set website. I'm going to exit the screen and go to that site. So you can see we don't have very many on there. We just have had one group who have done it so far. But it starts at grade 2, and you can see there are essential questions about nutrition. We've got some grade 4 and 5, and you can see Angela's text set for Island of Blue Dolphins, and she keeps adding more to it, so it'll be updated soon. We've got some grade 5 ones, grade 6 and 7 about Greek myths. There's Edgar Allan Poe, the Holocaust in grade 8. We've got grades 9 and 10 with the doublers, 11 and 12 with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and also 11 and 12 for advanced for student-centered text, where they made their own text sets. So you'll see there's some resources here, whatever resources the teachers submitted. We've also got all the resources that we shared with you tonight. We have links straight from that site to go to it. We've got other text set sites that you can visit. And then the resources I referenced about creating text sets, the qualitative rubrics are there. We've also got some great scaffolding for complex text resources here as well on the text set site. So I hope you'll visit that site. We've got 3 more cohorts who are working on creating the tech sets, building more tech sets, and we're working on vetting those tech sets. So I'm really excited about where this is going, and hope you guys will, if anyone out there wants to create some tech sets, reach out to us, because we want to build this site and have lots of different choices for teachers to use and adapt for their own purposes. So at this point, we're finished with the content. If there are any questions, if anyone wants to grab the mic and join in, or go to our Core Advocates hashtag and tweet, we would absolutely love to answer questions or be involved with you guys at work with you all and helping develop tech sets, or helping you facilitate some tech set projects in your own areas. So I know Angela we can't hear Angela, but I just need to thank Angela Lindsey for her contribution. She's working on more tech sets, and she's helping lead a group in her school in developing the tech sets. And I want to shout out to Katie, who is actually very much a math person, who has really helped, has stepped out of her comfort zone a little bit and worked with us on these tech sets. And thank you for your enthusiasm and all your help with this as well, Katie.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
Natalie, do you want to close us out?
Yep, that would be great. Thank you to the Kentucky ladies for being with us tonight. And oh, hold on one second. Let's get my screen up.
I just stopped sharing. Hopefully it'll work.
Oh, perfect. There we go. So again, thank you to the ladies from Kentucky who led us in that great webinar about tech sets. Next month, Ohio is going to be up, and they're going to be talking about seeing the shifts in assessment. So please keep an eye out for Twitter. We'll have more information on the date, and you'll be seeing the webinar from tonight out shortly. So thank you again, Kentucky ladies, and everyone that joined us tonight. And we look forward to continue learning with each other across state lines. So thank you for being with us, and have a great night.
Thank you.